Dig off. Good evening. I'll wait for Tira actually.
Yeah, you're recording.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tira. Good evening. Call this special meeting of the Town of Thompson Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is Monday, March 29th, 2021 at 7:00 p.m. We are meeting via Zoom. We will begin with a, a roll call of members present. Mr. Hill.
Alvin Hill, present.
Mr. Linky.
John B. Linky, present.
Mr. Poplawski.
Dave Poplawski, present.
Ms. Langlois.
Present.
Mr. Santos.
Brian Santos, present.
Mr. Rice.
Sorry, John Rice present.
Excellent. And Joseph Parodi Brown is present. Item 2, review and discussion of September 15th, 2020 amended regulations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's take it in order, starting with the memo, which is most of it anyway, that Cindy wrote up in January, and this incorporates her comments, my comments, and then later on some additional stuff submitted by Donna. All right. Item number 1, shooting ranges are not addressed in the amended regulations. I have had a couple of calls on the placement and safety of having a shooting range in neighborhoods. This is Cindy, my limited research indicates that the town does not have an ordinance addressing shooting ranges. In communication with the state police, who regulate shooting ranges, they stated their responsibility is to determine the placement of the backdrop. Further research needs to be done with state statutes in determining if a town has the authority to create and enforce regulations, either through ordinance or zoning regulations. And then my follow-up comment to that, given the hazardous nature of shooting ranges, it is probably worth it for the PZC to determine if it should be an allowable use, and if so, establish the level of review and the allowable districts. And then, presuming that you find it an acceptable use, my recommendation would be to make it a special permit use only in the business development district, and not just possibly, but probably with generous separation distances from other uses with guidance from the state police. Discuss.
Well, I think, well, as a staff member, I think one of the issues that needs to be done is to check with towns and see if towns have shooting ranges and ordinances. Is this something controlled by the Board of Selectmen or their governing board? So that would be one of my first suggestions. And of course, the other thing is it legal for a town to regulate either through ordinance or regulations shooting ranges? So something we have
had
control
talked
over.
about this one.
I don't think we did during the actual construction of the regulations, but the topic came up, I think, in a meeting afterwards. I think that's how it landed here.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So, I happen to be particularly close in my neighborhood to a shooting range, or a so-called shooting range with no backdrop. And my concern is the amount of lead that these guys are shooting into waterways, over waterways, discharging. I don't know if they're reloading, but I think that Cindy's suggestion, I think, is valid. But I think from a minimal standpoint, we need to be able to justify where they're shooting, what they're shooting over, aside from a backdrop.
Yeah, and Cindy, are you aware of how other towns do this, or?
No, unfortunately, I apologize, guys. I just don't have enough time I haven't had enough time to do that extra research that I suggested this, truthfully. So the other issue is I was very surprised at the relaxed attitude of the state police on this. Like, yeah, we do backdrops. Okay. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hill.
Thompson has a very new, well-organized shooting range.
we do.
And I think that if anyone is seriously thinking about a shooting range, they should certainly talk to, the club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
Which is
wonder,
that, the rod and,
Because
you're talking
when you
about the
think
Rod
of-
and Gun Club?
Yeah.
When you think of it, I mean, does the town really want to accept that liability? Oh, ow.
Interesting.
You also got Valley Springs.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Valley Springs. It's a wonderful shooting range.
Oh, I thought, what about
No, you
Rod
got
and Gun
two.
Club?
You got two.
Okay.
You got two. You got Thompson Rod and Gun Club and Valley Springs. They're the, far as I know, those are the only two that have been in this town as long as I can remember.
The Valley Springs is the newest one. I was involved with it.
Well, what if, Mr. Chairman, what if somebody doesn't belong to a club or chooses not to belong to a club?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm thinking is that we've got a lot of, sort of uncertainty, right? Where, do towns do ordinances? Do towns do planning? One of the things we've talked about is regularly reviewing the regulations, right? And seeing what sort of issues have come up and how they're working. And so I'm not sure if it's not a bad idea to table this till the next time we do so, just with, and which gives us time to find out if, where our authority in terms of regulations are, whether it should be done through ordinance, etc.
And Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hill?
it's possible too that we could have wording that, no shooting on weekends. That'll disturb a lot of people. And of course, it could violate our sound. Neighborhoods are not going to like the sound constantly.
But that's the sound you mean from the ordinance, right?
Right.
I don't, yeah, the
Well,
sound.
from the activity.
Right, but I mean, we're not regulating sound. I don't think, did we put regulations for sound in our regulations?
We took a lot of it out because we had no enforcement or measure mechanism.
Right, I think we took it all out.
Yeah, I think you're right, Cindy.
But I think because I had to address sound, I believe I looked just in the last week for something else. I believe I looked in the ordinances. And it did make some reference to sound. I could be wrong, sorry.
That's
But we
okay.
can check that. We can check that.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
Charlene,
Mr.
ahead, John.
Rice?
John Rice, I think if you're gonna start regulating that, I think it needs a lot more work to
Okay.
look into. Really, Alvin just mentioned on Sunday, I know for a fact, trap shooting is done Sundays down at Valley Springs. And that trap range has been in existence. I belong to the club for probably the last 60 years. And I don't know of any complaints. And you talk about a neighborhood, I mean, that's right at the end of the street of us, of several houses, that Valley Road, Valley Street there's no complaints. I don't know why we're digging into this. And
Oh, well, I can tell you why we're digging into it, because there was complaints. I have not gotten any complaints since the last ones, but it was last fall. There were complaints and the neighbors were actually really scared. And
is it
there
the
was-
neighbors around that
yes, yes.
shooting area?
Yes, and I would have to look at my records to see what areas it was, but it certainly wasn't areas that had acreage and acreage. That I do know. They were really scared.
Good.
Again,
Mr. Chair-
again, my point on that, depending who the neighbors were, that type of thing has been going on for 50 years, and it's a similar case to the racetrack. People that buy homes on Spicer Road, then all of a sudden they're opposed to the noise level. Well, you know, when you start buying a house, you better look at where you're moving into. And
Well-
I really don't, if they're gonna make an ordinance, then fine, then it'll be a town ordinance, but I think we're a land use, and that's kind of getting on the tip of things of what a land use or what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, that's the recreation on land use.
Mr. Lenke, did you, were you gonna say something?
Well, Mr. Rice kind of touched a real good, really touched it, but I was a member of Valley Springs, and I remember the trap shooting and in the area. The complaints that were being made, were they in the area, specifically in the area of Valley Springs or the Rod?
Oh,
Thompson
no.
Rod Gun?
Oh, no, it wasn't anywhere near there.
So
No,
you're talking,
I'm talking neighborhood.
That's a private, somebody's
neighborhood.
own property.
And the
that-
difference between the racetrack and the shooting in your backyard with the backdrop that has been approved by the state police is the cars stay on the racetrack. They're not gonna kill you. A stray bullet's gonna hurt you.
I'm not gonna disagree with you there,
Okay.
but like Mr. Rice says, I think I'm gonna have to say and lean into him is that, okay, we have 2 shooting ranges. The people have the right to go there, but anybody in a neighborhood, like I live here on Brickyard Road. Yeah, I got the government land behind me, the flood control for the Thompson Dam. You know, there's plenty of room, but that's limited too. Do I really want to hear somebody shooting their gun off? And, you know, there is no protection or anything like that. I think that's something we need to stay away from. We'll just let it, you know, people want to go shoot their gun, let them go down Valley Springs and Thompson Rod and Gun. But when you start putting in private shooting ranges in neighborhoods and something, we're asking for trouble. You know, that's a can of worms that I really don't want to.
So how do you prevent that? Because that's what they're doing.
Well, it has to become again, like Mr. Rice says, we have to do it. It'll have to be a town ordinance.
Okay.
That has to be a town ordinance. It shouldn't be anything to do with planning and zoning. Our job is to figure out how we're gonna get this town going moving forward, you know, with houses and all this other stuff. And
Oh, don't forget though, that's a recreation and you're pushing, well, you're not pushing, I apologize. You're encouraging recreation on properties. And that is
Cindy.
recreation, yes.
Cindy, Joe, if I may,
Mr.
Cindy,
Rice?
I would check with the state police now. If I start discharging a firearm on my property or anybody else does, I think a call from a neighborhood going to the state police, because I don't think it's legal to discharge a firearm on your property.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
you have
Mr.
to,
Very
I-
sensitive issue.
Mr.
Dave, you know about those regulations, right? You are yourself a hunter and a recreational shooter. Is that correct?
That's correct. So, you know, my example down here on Porter Plain Road, they're legal. The state police have been called a number of times. He's 500 feet away from his building, but shooting up the neighborhood and inviting on Facebook other people to come over. You know, so he's legal in the state police eyes, and they've been called a number of times. But he's shooting in wetlands and it's a shooting range.
And so do you think that's legal or illegal?
The state police haven't stopped him. It would be an ordinance or the town would have to take it up. The state police haven't shut him down because he's within the law of 500 feet from his house,
Okay,
from a dwelling. So if you've got 3 acres of land, you could technically have a shooting range and the state police not gonna stop you.
interesting. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Just 1 second, John. Were you
Yep.
trying to get something in, Brian?
Yeah, I just was looking up in the background here. Stamford, Connecticut has a code of ordinances, and it says section 242-1, discharge of firearms prohibited with the following exceptions. It is shall be unlawful to discharge any fire alarm with the following exceptions by a police officer on any shooting range authorized in writing by the chief of police. There's like a whole list
Okay.
of things here. That
So that's
has,
in Stanford?
yeah, Stanford Code of Ordinances. They have a whole list of
Okay.
things here.
Okay.
Mr. Lanky.
Thank you. What Dave just said about 500 feet, that means not just his dwelling, but it has to be a neighbor's dwelling too.
Any dwelling, yeah.
Would that be correct, Dave?
That's correct. Yeah. And he's got the 500 feet. He's got 3 acres of land, he's got 3 acres of land, but
What about a neighbor? Is the neighbor within 500 feet?
the neighbor's not within 500 feet, but I don't know what he's using for a backdrop. If he doesn't, well, it's going to go a lot more than 500 feet.
I understand that, but what I'm looking at is you said 500 feet from a dwelling. Well, to me, a dwelling could be his house or a neighbor's house, or 3 or 4 neighbors. So that to me that's close quarters.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think we'll,
Table.
I think as we come to September will be a year from the adoption of these. So I think it'll be a good idea to get in the practice of reviewing them every September. If we have more information then, if we think, it's an ordinance and it's not our concern, we'll have more clarity perhaps by then.
Okay.
Just one more comment, Joe, my last comment is that, let me see if I'm unmuted, yeah.
No, we got you, Mr. Rice.
Okay, the thing, if we do pursue an ordinance, then if the state police came in and their responsibility is a safe backdrop, then I think that would cover it. A stray bullet going somewhere. Like Alvin mentioned, you go down to Valley Spring, we got 500 feet elevation to go to Passay Road when they're
Correct.
shooting trap and shotguns and don't go that far. And plus the new rifle range they made, they got backdrop. That's a state police, I assume, approved. So.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Okay, if there are no further comments, we can move on to the next items, which are related to stables and horses.
Okay. Item number 2, 3, and 4. Amended regulations do not address riding stables, academies, or boarding stables for 5 or more horses. This issue was addressed in previous regulations in R80 and R40, Article 8, Section 1, R80, A2, and Section 2, R40, A2. Amended regulations, Article 4A in the RRAD, Section 2E, Fertilizer and Manure Management, addresses this topic referencing state statutes and agency requirements. It does address the distance management needs, the distance that the management needs to be from property boundaries. This issue was addressed in previous regulations in the R80 and R40, Article 8, Section 1, R80, A1B, and Section 2, R40, A1B. I have received inquiries of how many horses one is allowed on their property. Amended regulations do not address a number per acre. Is this something that needs to be researched for limitations or restrictions per acreage? My follow-up comment, the guidance document, Zoning Regulations for Livestock Best Practices, published by the Connecticut Rural Conservation and Development Area, Connecticut RC&D, recommends against setting specific animal density limits in municipal regulations. That document specifically recommends the use of setbacks and buffers as controlling measures within zoning. However, it does suggest that site plan review for livestock within residential areas may be appropriate. Therefore, my recommendation would be to consider altering the level of review for livestock agriculture to site plan review by the Commission and establish some objective parameters which the PZC can use, avoid animal density language if a better alternative can be found. Discuss?
I think Well, the first thing, I think you do need to have to follow the regulations for the riding academies and stables, and boarding stables. I think you need something for that, definitely.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by
I
that?
mean,
Well, we had it
wouldn't you
before.
say, Cindy, that those are covered under the agricultural related?
No, no.
Let me go back and look at the actual language. Keep talking, guys. I'm gonna pull up the, oops.
So when you say the language, the district language or your definition?
I'm talking about the table of uses language. There are a couple of agricultural adjacent uses that get addressed. And I just want to be sure I say it what it is. Hang on one second.
Farm stands, farm stores, signage, entertainment,
Farm-based recreational activities?
fertilizer,
Yes,
manure.
that's the one, farm-based recreational activities. That's exactly what I had in mind, Joe.
Well, and my other question too is, we included that other uses reasonably related to the intended purpose of the district as determined by the commission. Right, so we have that language in there as well as a, as an application for, they can apply to receive a special permit.
It is a horse stable and boarding them, is that a recreation?
What else would it be?
It's a business.
It's a business.
It's a recreational business.
No,
I mean,
it's a
those,
business.
those,
Not necessarily. If
No, it's.
I have a stable down the road from me, and it's not necessarily recreational. People just
No.
board their horses there and take them home.
That,
My
and
neigh-
then the
my
right,
neighbor does the same thing.
and the riding stable is a school. It's
Right.
teaching somebody to do something. I'm looking for the regulations. Oh, shoot. God.
I like the regulations we had in these different zones, especially with
Yeah.
the regulations of fertilizer manure management.
Yeah.
Because I see some of these places that the horse area is pretty close to a water stream, or the fertilizers about 10 feet. I have a personal experience that the manure fertilizer is right on the border, so to change. I don't
right,
know
so the,
how that's-
I believe that the language that we adopted recommended following the language that is used by the Department of Agriculture, which would include management practices related to, being adjacent to wetlands or whatever.
Yeah, livestock owners must comply with generally accepted agricultural practices through the right to farm law, Connecticut General Statutes, Chapter 368M, Sections 19A, 341, and 341A, prevailing Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection Water Pollution Control Statutes, and the statutes are listed, and the state of Connecticut public health codes. So that's in our, that's what Cindy's referencing in 3, that we have that fertilizer and manure management.
We do. So if you go back to your old regulations, and both R80 and R40, which is now one district. So uses permitted at right was farms, and then they have the fertilizer issues. And then it went on to say, number 2, so it's not the farms I'm concerned with. It's the riding stables or academies, that the lot area shall be at least 10 acres. Riding stable, well, let me start over. Riding stables or academies or boarding stables for 5 or more horses provided. So if you have more than 5 horses, then what it's saying that you should have 10 acres.
And Cindy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you say this was by right in our old
Yes.
regulations?
Yes, it's by right in both those districts, and it's not permitted at all in any of the other districts. I'm just trying, let me just
Yeah.
double check that.
So my as I was looking at this and going through this, I think at the very least we are covered by the any other uses reasonably related to the intended purpose of this district. Right? I think riding stables or riding academies would reasonably fall within this district. At which point that's a special permit review by the commission.
When somebody calls me up and says, how many horses can I have on 2 acres? What am I supposed to tell them? 10? Because I've had those calls.
Well, and so, so going to these, I would, Tara, can you tell us a little bit more about the CTRC&D recommendations, these zoning best practices?
Sure. So they do put out a guidebook, which is, decently put together specifically to assist municipalities in developing zoning language around agricultural pursuits. And in that, again, they recommend specifically against setting levels of animal density. And that's for a number of different reasons. Best practices change. If the state decides to set a level which later comes in conflict with the town, then you create conflict. And also because a responsible farmer is going to be somewhat self-limiting anyway. I mean, there's only so much animal density you can get on a certain plot of land. I mean, if you have a 5-acre plot, you're not going to get 500 cows on there. You're just not. You're going to get the amount of cows that you can reasonably house and feed on your property within the setbacks. Now, having said that, as I read through it again, it did suggest that site plan review might be appropriate so that the commission could address issues specific to given properties. For example, if they're adjacent to wetlands. In specific answer to Cindy's question, as of this moment, there are properties in town I know of that have horses on them that fall in violation of the old regulations anyway. They did it anyway, right? So it's again, this case of, we know people are responsibly keeping animals differently than they were previously allowed to. They just didn't bother to go check. And whatever, no harm, no foul, nobody's complained. If somebody had complained, they would have been in violation. So I would stay with RC&D's recommendations in terms of animal density. But I think there is a valid point to be made about riding stables, academies, or boarding stables if you think that they are not farm-based recreational activities. And if you are not sufficient, if you don't think it's sufficiently covered by, they just be required to come up for a special permit because it's something, as Joe says, that specifically fits in the description of the goals of the district, but just doesn't happen to be a named use. That's exactly why you put that language in there, so that anything that you missed or didn't foresee, you would have a process by which you could deal with it. In which case, Cindy, if somebody comes to you with the question, can I have a riding stable? And you look in the district and you say, well, it's not specifically covered, but it clearly fits the description of the district. Therefore, you have to apply for a special permit. I mean, that's just the response. Did you have another question there, Joe?
No.
I see Brian's hand up. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Santos.
Just for again, I'm looking around in the background here. I went to Pomfret, Connecticut. They answered this question. They say, much land do I need to have horses? And their response was, a minimum lot size of 3 acres is required to have 1 horse. Of those 3 acres, 1 acre must be land usable for grazing for the first horse. An additional ½ acre of grazed land is required for each additional horse.
That's tough.
It's more, I think it's more liberal than the regulations that we had previously. Didn't you just come up and
Yeah.
say it was 10 acres?
No, that's for riding stables or academies
Oh,
or
just-
boarding
I'm-
stables. Yes,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
for 5 or more horses.
Were you out there where what Brian just read is that's an individual. Would that be an individual?
Yeah, that would be an individual.
Yeah.
So I've had people come up, I have got a couple of acres, can I do a couple of horses? And I go, yeah, as long as they're 150 feet away from your neighbor, the manure and, the fertilizer program. The other thing too is the question which you never even asked in any of these reports, these reviews here, is do they have to have a building for it? A lot of people have animals and they don't have buildings. They're not going to put them under cover. Or not even a,
Lean-to.
lean-to for a post and a roof. So are they required to have it, or can they just leave their animals out in the cold? I don't know. I don't know if that's even our area either, as far as how they're stored.
Is
or
that under the
owned.
CTRC and D, Tira? Do you happen to know?
Connecticut, hold on. When I'm screen sharing, it doesn't work very well. Let me stop share.
I'm just curious to know if they say something about stables. I mean, my neighbor's he's got 1 horse. He has a stable. He's probably one of the people coming down and ask how many horses he can have on his property. The guy
I
down-
know that I had,
How much land
Save
does he
this.
have though, Dave?
I
Brian?
don't know how many
Approximately.
acres he has over there. It's likely more than 3 though, John.
Yeah, because I kind of like what you just quoted, whatever town that was.
Yeah, it was
'Cause
Pomfret.
you take a ride down to 21, and just before you get into the light, then you see them horses that are on the side there, and you got 2 horses in there, and it's just a mud pit. And the horses are scratching for something to eat. I'm sure they feed them well with grain and stuff, but just for browsing on pasture, there's no pasture there for them to eat.
So Tira, long and short of what you just said with the guidance there from that CTRC and D is that they would have to come down and apply for a special permit to do that, is to get horses on their property? Is that what they're doing?
for the riding stables, boarding,
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
yeah, for the board.
Right. And then for the others, if they're livestock, they're just governed by setbacks, which right now is 150 feet on all sides.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I would argue a riding stable is a recreational
Yeah, I would agree.
use, so they would only have to apply for a site plan review, a site plan review. A boarding,
Is that the way it is right now, Joe? Site plan review? Yeah,
it's a site plan review for farm-based recreational activities.
Only in RR,
Yeah.
Hey, which we'll get to later on, which is one of my other issues, new issues. So I don't understand, a riding stable is recreation?
Well, if I'm going there to
Still a
ride
business.
horses, that's a recreational activity, isn't it?
Well, it's a business.
But lots of businesses
Yes,
are
a
recreational,
recreational business.
right? If I have a corn maze, that's
Okay,
a
all right.
recreational business.
Okay,
If I have laser tag, that's a recreational business.
okay.
The boarding stable arguably is not recreational, but they under the other uses clause could come and that they would have to apply for a special permit, which isn't a bad idea if we want to give them some of that oversight.
So I do have a copy of this document somewhere in my files at home, which I can send it to all of you as more background reading if you want. Obviously, I'm scrolling through right now very quickly.
Yeah.
Just interestingly, this just pops out at me just because of Cindy mentioning the lean-tos. The shelter and enclosure requirements for livestock vary greatly depending on the animal species and the farming operation. Shelters may be permanent or temporary, or may be trees and other natural windbreaks. The size may vary based on the access to outside lots and overall management of the farm. I mean, I can tell you that in general, RC&D, which is an advocacy for agriculture nonprofit within the state, is very permissive in the language that they recommend. And they justify it pretty well throughout the document.
Yeah, like even just there, Tira, it said shelters should not, the shelter and enclosure requirements are an issue of animal husbandry and should not be addressed in municipal zoning regulations.
No, because if there's a complaint, then it goes to the enforcement in the Department of Ag, because we've had them down here for a complaint, and the animal officer and I went down there to the property. So of course,
So there is an avenue. Yeah. So there is an avenue for enforcement.
For enforcement to
So
cruelty of animals, yes, definitely. From the Department of Ag, yes. Yep.
I'm happy to hear what others think. I for one, feel like we have avenues in the regulations as written for these types of businesses.
And I don't, I think it's convoluted. I think it's all over the place. There's just no, this other, the old regulations for the riding stables, academies, and boarding stables for 5 or more horses, that was a definite. You knew when somebody said horses, you knew where to go. With this, I have no idea where to go, unless this discussion here is going to tighten that up. But right now, I wouldn't know what to tell. I still don't know what to tell people. If you think that, if you think that the current regulation,
as I see it, Cindy, as I see it, if they come and say, I want to have a riding stable, I want to have a riding school, you say, great, that is a farm-based recreational activity. You need a site plan review for the commission.
a riding school is not a recreation. A riding school is a business. It's a school.
It's a recreational business.
No, not a school. Academy. Why is the academy? Is Marionapolis a recreation? It's a school. A riding academy is a school.
This is a genuine question.
Marionapolis is an actual school for actual academic
Forget I said that.
education.
Don't even go into it. Don't even
But Cindy, this is a genuine question. Are you talking about like people are going full time to riding school?
Yeah. Yeah, people are learning how to ride. Yes.
From 8 a.m. till 2:30 p.m. every day.
No.
Okay.
Of course not.
Okay. Because if that were the case, because there are skiing schools, like there are schools in New Hampshire for people who they ski all morning and they take like 2 hours of academics in the afternoon. Like these things exist. So if that were true, if that's what they were doing, then that is addressed in the table of uses as well. It's a school and it needs a special permit.
If you guys think that a riding
and then the final one, if
school,
it's a boarding stable that has no recreational component, then it's another use and it would come before us as a special permit review.
What? Okay, I will just say it one more time. Okay, I understand the riding stables. Yeah, all right, forget it. Do what you want with it. Just tell me how to regulate it when somebody calls me. That's all.
Well,
So
just write it. All right, no, I take that back. Just write it up so that I know how to regulate it. Right now, I don't know how to regulate it.
Mr. Santos.
But I think Joe is answering your question on the riding stable, but maybe your question is like my neighbor. He just has a horse. He doesn't ride it. He just, let's just say he likes to pet it. Like I don't know what he does with the horse, right?
That's a very unusual relationship.
Right. So like I don't have a love for horses. Sorry. Is that your question? Is like, what happens if it's not recreational use and somebody just wants to have a horse like a dog as a pet or something? I don't know. Maybe I'm asking a dumb question.
No, you're not asking a dumb question. I don't, when somebody says to me, how much land do I need for how many horses? I don't know what to tell them.
Yeah. That's where I feel like the Pomfret thing that I read earlier could be utilized, but right
Okay.
now I think it's done by setbacks, whatever the number was that you guys.
That is correct.
So
That is exactly how it's
maybe
done.
it could be one or the other. It's 150 feet or this new guidance that I said from Pomfret. I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
Right, it could be, but how do you regulate that 150 feet if they decide that they want to have, oh, I can have 10 horses?
Yeah,
Then they can have 10 horses.
that's where I'm like in favor of the other, but I'll leave it to the.
I mean,
But
there are good pet owners and there are bad pet owners. And we have a very limited ability to force people to be good pet owners. I mean, a horse is a big pet. I mean, unless it happens to be a working horse, like a draft horse, but those are extremely rare.
Yeah. I've never seen him on the horse.
Okay.
Mr. Poplawski.
I'm just thinking to the airline trail and, you know, in the future, as you look at the airline trail and all of the land around it, you know, I think that we need some sort of a regulation, like Brian mentioned, that limits to what people can do per acre. I mean, you could put 15 horses on an acre and start renting them out for trail rides on the airline trail that we're promoting within the town.
Mhm.
So I think there needs to be some control over it. You know, is it the Pomfret the best case, or is it, but I agree with Cindy, there needs to be some sort of control over it.
Right, and then,
And guidance.
thank you, but, and then to get back to the riding stables, academies, boarding stables, no matter what you want to call them, you know, we're gonna call them that, but whatever classification you're gonna put them in, don't you still think that you need some limit of acres like we had last time? That you have to have, you know, 5 or more, you have to have 10 acres
So I think
for any
possibly-
of those 3.
I think possibly, Cindy. I think, you know, one of our goals in creating the new regulations was to look at the reasons for the regulations, right? And in general, just because this regulation has always existed isn't necessarily a reason to continue the regulation. The reason, can I just finish?
Oh,
please?
I'm sorry. I'm so
That's
sorry,
okay.
Joe, of course.
The reason why I would tend to say that number of animals per acres isn't necessarily a great idea is because the people who do that work, the people who are in that field, are telling me it's not a best practice. Right, I'm relying on someone who has an opinion that is more informed than mine.
Okay.
Good call.
But
Keep in mind as well that 150 feet on all sides, you know, that is very limiting on the number
Small,
of
yeah.
properties, of
Right.
smaller properties.
But okay, so this just, I hate to throw another, you know, thorn in here, but so going back to that regulation, the old regulation, it also says, and this is under riding stables, academies, etc. The use of temporary buildings or trailers for stabling of horses in excess of 15 days is prohibited. So you don't have anything like that either. So you could have, like somebody just brought up that scenario, yeah, let's board the horses. Yeah, you can keep your trailer here because there's no limit on the trailers. So then now you've got property that you have all these trailers, you have no limit on the trailers. That's where they're boarding the horse at. I just see a cluster, sorry. If you don't have something that you had before, I hear what you're saying, Joe, that the reason why you changed it is to get away from what we had before. But to me, that was a good control over 5 or more horses on a piece of property.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I think by the same token that because that we wouldn't reject something just because it's what we had before, right? I think I just want to make sure that we are making informed, reasoned decisions
Okay,
about all of these things.
okay.
I want to be
Okay. So I can
So-
tell you
so-
one informed reason is I get a lot of calls on how many horses can I have on properties. I ask them what they're doing with them. Is, oh, I just, like horses. I want to ride horses. I have a couple of horses and I get a couple more. If they said to me boarding stable and stuff like that, then I would pursue it a little bit further, but they haven't.
Mhm.
So, and I do know one person could not buy a lot because they did not have the 150 feet on the sides, either side.
Right. So
So.
the regulations are in fact, doing some of what we want, right? Are
Yeah, I'm
Are
afraid I might have told a
regulating-
couple people before I really got into it. Yeah, have what you want.
that's regulating that property isn't appropriate for horses, right?
Right. That particular one, I really looked at it really closely. So, I mean, I'm hoping I told the other people, yeah, you have enough of 150 acres on each side. So it's just not clear.
And I do
I like
hear your
things a little more precise. So,
yeah, your
okay.
concern. To the question about temporary structures and temporary buildings and trailers, am I crazy or is that generally covered? Isn't there?
It could be. I can look at that. This is the first time that really came up for me in my mind is, reading through this whole regulation, the old regulation.
I actually don't think that is covered, but I think I know what you're thinking of, Joe. I think that you are thinking of trailers, meaning RVs, and our entire section of regulations governing those.
I think you're right, Tara. I think that is what I'm thinking of.
So
No,
I think,
I think Cindy's talking about horse trailers.
yeah.
Yes, she definitely is.
Yeah.
With
So-
I was
20
So-
horse trailers in a place and they leave them there forever, whatever.
That's interesting because that Valerie that came to us and she didn't need to come to us. There was something about trailers. I have to look at that, what she had
yeah, but that
asked
was for like
Yeah, she
But
planned
that
on
was
having,
for a one
yeah,
that was for a
one-
one-day
yeah.
event.
Yeah, okay.
yeah,
all right.
but they may have more of those one-day events.
Right,
And
right.
there could be several trailers. I don't know what the number would be, depending how many people participate in that, but everybody's gonna come with a trailer. And it's
Right,
gonna, and where she lives on Allen Road, I can see how many trailers are gonna be blocking that road.
That's right, because her events are dependent on a certain she has a certain criteria for her events. I'd have to look at her folder again. I
Didn't
can't
she-
remember.
Didn't she provide us with a whole parking plan of all the places the
Oh, yeah.
trailers could go
Yeah.
that weren't
yeah.
going to be on the road at all?
Right. So I guess what I'm kind of thinking here, okay, so she has an event in June 1st, and then her next one is July 15th, and maybe somebody had a couple of extra trailers or something. Can I just leave these here? Yeah, you can leave them here. I don't know if that would ever happen. That's just a guess.
But keep in mind, Valerie has about 500 acres at her
Yeah,
disposal.
exactly. Exactly. Okay. I think that we've beaten
So
this one to
Joe,
death.
do you see any action required on these items in this? I mean, we tabled the shooting ranges. Is there a decision that needs to be made on any of these in this session?
I think the question before us is, the parameters for number of animals on a certain piece of property. If we want to adjust that language or continue the setback parameters we have in place. And that's to the.
Are you asking the commission to vote on that
Yeah, I'm
tonight?
asking the commission, to think of it or to discuss it.
I'm in favor of acres per horse, because then that would eliminate somebody of having several horses on a small parcel of land and maintaining that 150 feet and doesn't maintain their horses as well as somebody else. I think that gives them protection. If we set the acreage, then they have plenty of land.
Do we know why the recommendation against density limits is?
Let me see if that is specifically addressed. Do I still have it called up? No, of course not. That would be too convenient.
Isn't that what you just said earlier, Tara, that based on that, whatever you were quoting that organization, that they indicated that the zoning shouldn't set that type of regulation?
Yeah, but I'm just
Yes,
trying-
that's what I said, but Joe's asking what their rationale was. So, and we didn't talk about that. So let me see if I can find that. Animal density, page 16.
And the
And I'll
background
share
on that,
again.
the background on that organization is what, Tara? Who are they?
It's the Connecticut Rural Conservation and Development Area. They are a nonprofit working in the state, specifically on concerns of agriculture, conservation, and rural development. It's their mission. Here we go. Animal density formulas were originally based on the pasture yield needed to support the animal's nutrient needs. They were not intended to be used in municipal zoning regulations. Animal density formulas do not consider modern feeding and husbandry methods, including rotational grazing, measured feed rations, grown off-site, manure management techniques, and dedicated exercise programs. To address animal density issues, one needs to consider the management practices in place that reduce nuisances and provide for a healthy environment for the animals regardless of density. Animal density formulas that find their way into municipal zoning regulations can create enforcement issues, raising the expectation that zoning enforcement officers will spend their days literally counting sheep. Neither the state's definition of agriculture nor Public Act 490, the state's land use value assessment law, sets minimum acreage requirements for farming, including the raising of livestock. Unfortunately, municipalities have often relied solely on animal density formulas, setting minimum acreage requirements or establishing an allowable number of animals per acre, regardless of the suitability of the site for livestock. That is their rationale and then their recommendation. Zoning regulations for the raising of livestock should focus on setbacks, buffers, and site suitability to minimize impact to the environment and adjacent properties. In moderate to high density residential areas, it may be prudent to restrict agricultural and farm use to some extent. In those areas, a permit for livestock should be considered to enable site-specific review and potentially allow livestock where it can be demonstrated to be appropriate, sometimes with conditions. And that gets back to, in the memo, hold on, where that was the justification for my follow-up recommendation here. It does, however, meaning that document, does suggest that site plan review for livestock within residential areas may be appropriate. Therefore, the recommendation may be to consider altering the level of review for livestock agriculture to site plan review by the commission and establish some objective parameters which the PZC can use. Avoid animal density language if a better alternative can be found.
Okay, so can you move, well, I can look at my paper here. Okay.
Do you want me to go up or down?
No, I'm looking at my paper here. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll go up to go. So this is actually was two different issues here. I think the issue, I think you're fine with what you just read for, somebody has a farm, they have livestock, etc. The issue of the riding stables and the academies and boarding stables, that to me, they're two separate issues. That's an issue that should be resolved because they are businesses, whether you consider them recreation or just a business, and how many horses you want and how many acres you want per horse.
And so that's funny, Cindy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Were you finished?
Yeah. Mhm.
Sorry, I didn't want to.
That's all right.
And to me, that's funny because I think that issue is more clear than the other issue. I think you know, a riding stable is a recreational business. A boarding stable is other uses, and there is language for both of those things in the table.
Okay, but we still don't have a limit. So if you're saying there's language in the tables to address that, what is your criteria for allowing them to have that? How many acres do they need? How many horses can they have? There's no criteria.
We're trying to avoid criteria.
That would, well, yeah, I mean, to that, I would say I would lean on that language of site suitability, of environmental, you know, of
Right.
what.
Okay.
Yeah, so
But the
if
good
you
news for
guys
you,
make
Cindy,
the choice,
Well-
the good news for you, Cindy, is that's up to us, right?
Yeah.
Because both of those come to the commission.
You're right.
so it seems to me that the actual choice that you guys may want to vote on, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Joe, is to vote whether you want to change the level of review for livestock agriculture to site plan review by the commission. Then you get to look at wetlands surrounding, you get to set conditions as you would for a special permit, but without the public hearing requirement. You get to ask questions about the planned density without setting a formula that may not be appropriate for all sites.
Yeah,
My vote is for a site plan. And what happens, you just mentioned, Tara, that you don't need a public hearing. Did you do away with the option of the commission requiring or asking for a public hearing if they so desired? Is
No.
that gone?
that
Well,
exists.
then it becomes a special permit.
Yeah, no, John, that language still exists. So at every level, or at the two lower levels, the individual or the body responsible for that level. So the ZEO in the case of a zoning permit, or the commission in case of a site plan review, can bump it up a level, right? So Cindy can bump something up to us that is technically a zoning permit, but she thinks should have a site plan review. And we can choose something that should have a site plan review. We can choose to make it a special permit.
All right, thank you.
You know, this is interesting that we're talking about this because I expanded on my new memo. I expanded the agricultural and residential rural agricultural district. I don't know if we should talk about that at this time too. So.
Well, let's try to close this
All right.
topic and then
Okay.
move on to that. And so the livestock agriculture, you know, so the thing we're sort of discussing, right, is separating livestock agriculture from agriculture. And in those areas where it is a zoning permit, bumping it up to a site plan review. Does that make sense to everyone, what we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
No, doesn't make, no, I can't wrap my head around it, but that's
So-
okay.
So for example, Cindy, for example, in the RRAD, right? Agriculture is a use that requires only a zoning permit, right?
Now, yeah.
Yeah. So what the proposal would be to create a second use, an additional use that is livestock agriculture. And instead of requiring a zoning permit, it would require a site plan review by the commission.
All right, so do you have criteria that they follow when they apply for a site plan review? What is your criteria that they have to follow?
Well, again, that's where we would lean on the, those best practices that the CT, RC&D mentions, right? And so, and again, right, like that's what I'm saying, right? Like that's where the commission gets involved and makes the decision, right? So right
So
now
I have a suggestion, Joe.
yeah.
I have a suggestion, which is to have the simple vote on whether you want to move it to a site plan review, because this isn't changing anything,
Right.
This because in order to change the book, because this is the established code, you have to have the public hearing.
Mhm.
So if you decide in this vote that that is the level of review that you want to approve, my background work will then be to posit a set of parameters which you can then discuss later and accept or reject individually. How's
Right.
that sound?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was. Thank you. That's for more clearly saying what I was trying
Well,
to get to.
That's the same thing as my word criteria, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right.
So the motion, as stated by the chair, is to propose the addition of a separate use for livestock agriculture. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Motion made by the chair, seconded by Mr. Santos. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, a yes will propose the addition of a separate category for livestock agriculture. A no will propose keeping the regulations as written. Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hill, yes.
Mr. Lenke. Did we lose Mr.
You might
Lenke?
want to come back to John.
I'm not sure if he's frozen or asleep. Mr. Poplawski.
Poplawski, yes.
Ms. Langlois.
Yep.
Mr. Santos.
Yes.
Mr. Rice.
Rice, yes.
Joseph Brody Brown, yes. So the motion passes. Okay. So Tira, you'll do that proposal work for us then, yes?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you all for that. Our next, the next one, item 5, I'm just going to, Tira, if you don't mind, just breeze through it pretty quickly. I don't think it requires much discussion. Cindy's point is that household pet is defined under livestock, but isn't defined on its own. And we would propose defining it as its own item.
Makes sense.
Is there any objection to that course of action? Hearing no objection, that proposal will move forward.
Okay.
The next one is a big one.
Page 59, Article 5A, Earth and Gravel Removal, Section 3B is titled Exemptions. The exemptions flow into what criteria are needed for a permit. See below. A, exemptions. The following uses are exempt from the provisions of this section as a requirement to obtain a permit. 1, excavations, not fills, for pools, raised foundations, retaining walls, basements, or other below-grade structures, and earthwork associated with approved subdivisions do not require a grade and gravel excavation permit, but are subject to building permits. A grading gravel excavation permit is otherwise required if any of the following criteria apply. A, earth movement is greater than 1,500 cubic yards in order to avoid deep excavations, excessive sloping, excessive fills. B, grading obstructs or diverts a drainage course. C, importing or exporting of earth is greater than 1,500 cubic yards. 2, excavation, removal, filling, or grading in direct connection with an oh, that's the exemption. Okay.
That's the exemption, yep.
Yeah. And 3, excavation, removal, filling, or grading of a total amount up to 1,500 cubic yards. The above should have its own heading, such as gravel operation special permit, for easy identification of what activity needs a special permit. Justification, easy reference for the layperson. My follow-up comment, which remains the same, that I understand the point that Cindy's making, but this was the best language we were able to come up with at that time. And I don't see a better way to phrase it that is actually clearer. I am totally open to suggestions there, as long as the actual facts stay the same, which are the facts that
Right.
you guys agreed to.
My orderly mind just says that this is just messed up. So, it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't sit right.
Ryan.
You have
do you wanna-
exemptions and then you have why you need a permit.
I feel like
To reverse
this
that,
Yeah,
makes it that it could be as simple as a formatting adjustment where
Right.
these are further indented so that the exemptions are clearer,
Yeah.
more clearly exemptions. Is
I
that
thought
all
that's
it
the
really
way-
is? It's just
Here, I thought that's
formatting?
the way- I thought that's the way it was written, because I believe I gave it to you like that, where it's indented, where those follow that guide. Was that not the way it was outlined in the,
I don't know. I gotta go look, of course.
Yeah, I think.
But
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think indenting A, B, and C further would be the goal.
okay.
so let's see. I mean, let's look at them together. I'll be perfectly happy if that's all it is. I mean, here's how it's laid out in the book.
Oh, okay.
no, that whole thing, that whole section B is exemptions, but oh, wait a minute, no, you can do this. So it should be, you should have exemptions and then why you need a permit. It should be two separate things. Because that is not about exemptions, that's about why you need a permit.
But
So
I
the
think,
question,
but Cindy, my sense, and I could be wrong here, and Tara, feel free, or anyone to jump in, right? My sense is that these A, B, and C refer specifically to something that otherwise would be an exemption,
correct.
right? So it's it's an exception to an exemption, which is why it needs to be under this
Yeah.
section.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Right.
I'm telling you what otherwise is required. If any of the following criteria, if you have over 1,500 yards, you have to pull a permit to do that.
All
Right,
right.
because the
Whatever.
no, it's not whatever, Cindy. It's the danger is, right, if we set up item 1 by itself, items 1, 2, and 3 by themselves as exemptions, and I'm doing an excavation for a pool, but I'm moving more than 1,500 cubic yards for my pool, then the danger is I come in and say, well, no, it's for a pool. It's an exemption, right?
Right.
So we have to specifically tag these additional criteria to that exemption.
That is correct.
And I do see your point, Cindy, but I don't think that there is another way that makes this clearer, because as Joe says, these items relate back to
They
this
link to number
exemption.
1. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do agree that it could be formatted slightly better in the indent. So let's make that note. And that actually ended up being easier than I thought it was going to be.
I mean, we spent a lot of time on this note. We're back
Yeah.
and forth with Janet and
And
everything.
I
lot.
disagreed with the then too, so, but probably wasn't as vocal.
Okay. All right, moving on. Number 7, the 3 commercial districts, the Business Development District, the Thompson Corridor Development District, the Downtown Mill Rehabilitation District, table of permitted use charts do not address a structure on the property that is used only for storage. Everybody will remember this has come up recently. I have had a couple of requests, this is Cindy's comment, I have had a couple of requests, one that needs to come before the PZC in the future, and at this time, I told the applicant's site design representative that I was going to put it under any other use that not anticipated section of the table of permitted uses. Do we leave it this way or consider a separate line item in the table of permitted use charts? And my follow-up comment, Cindy and I discussed this item at the time. This was back in January. Her suggestion that structures for use as passive commercial storage as opposed to warehousing for distribution or storage rental businesses should have a line item within the table of uses would provide clarity for property owners. Recommend adding for each district. PZC may wish to discuss whether this is a simple permit or site plan review activity, but a special permit is not recommended for a low intensity use like passive storage. And again, that's not a legal term, that is a term of art that I came up with to differentiate between a storage rental business or warehousing for distribution, just a guy who's storing stuff on his property.
But this is only for the business district. This doesn't have anything to do with the issue that came up before us. I think there was two of them. They just wanted the storage on on residential property. This is only for business.
Right,
districts.
passive commercial storage.
Right,
Similar though, in that it is, a use that is not directly addressed and is low intensity.
Right.
Yeah, so, does it seem that the proposed solution of adding it as a use requiring either a zoning permit or a site plan review by the commission makes sense?
I think if the language is good, I just think a zoning permit. I don't know about you guys. I mean,
That's my,
gals, yeah.
I tend to agree with you, Cindy, there, for sure.
Do you want to bring that to a vote for your members, sir?
I was, waiting for a little, a sign from them.
Joe, I agree. I
Mr.
think
Pulaski.
that, leave it in Cindy's hands, and I agree with you.
Okay, so then the chair will move a proposal to add passive storage, low intense.
I'll figure something out that
to be
fits the description.
To be named later, but that type of storage to be a simple zoning permit granted by the CEO.
Joe, do we have to review the language after Tira writes it, or?
Well, all of these are just proposals that will eventually have to go to public hearing, and then we'll have to vote on
Right.
specifically. So, yeah, you're not committing yourself to that vague word salad I just threw out.
What I'll end up doing, Dave, is, and it's not going to be this week, but it'll be soon, I will take all those comments that I've been adding on the sides and create a follow-up to this, which was under these items, this is either what was decided or this is the additional information. For example, in the case of the shooting ranges where nothing was decided, but any place there was a decision, I'll indicate that. And if it required additional language, then I will propose some language for you guys to discuss later.
Okay.
So the chair has made the motion,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Poplawski. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Santos?
Just have one question.
Certainly.
So this proposal is strictly business use and not the topic of having a detached garage or other storage facility in front of your house. Is that a separate item on here?
That's totally separate. This only
Okay.
has to do with those 3 districts, and
Okay,
those all
I just
3
wanted to
are,
make sure I was absolutely
Yep.
clear on that. That's
Yep.
all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Santos. Thank you, Cindy. Any other discussion? Okay, a yes vote will propose that change. A no vote will keep as written. Mr. Hill,
Alvin Hill, yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Poplawski,
If Fafalski, yes.
Mr. Rice,
I'll abstain on that one.
okay, thank you. Mr. Lenke, do you care to vote on the motion?
I'm still undecided on it.
Okay, so we'll call that an abstention?
Yes, that I would say yes.
Okay, and Charlene, I did ask for your vote as well, right? I did, okay. So yeah, so the proposal passes with 5 yes votes and 2 abstentions.
So, and the motion was again, Joe, to add this as a zoning permit, right?
That's right. So while she's tapping away, the next one is our number 8, Article 5, Special Uses. Article 5A, Section 1, Standards for Home Occupation. There is no criteria for signs. Tira says, PZC may wish to discuss whether separate sign criteria are needed for home occs or whether the general guidelines for signs are sufficient.
Mr. Chairman, unless I'm mistaken, after I made that comment, I pointed out in the January zoning meeting that I wasn't even looking at the regulations at the time, and there is in fact a standard for signs for home occupations articulated within that section.
where's it
this
at,
is-
Tara? Because I'm looking for it. I know you had told me that, and I'm looking for it. What section is it?
Bear with me. It is. Where's my home occs?
Page
Home
56.
occs.
56.
Page
Here we
94.
go.
No, 56.
94 is signs.
Da-da-da. Changes to the outside appearance shall be minimized and shall be consistent with a residential structure other than one non-illuminated sign no more than 4 square feet in
Okay.
size.
All right, good. I totally missed that. Apologize. There are a couple other things that are missing out of here, and I actually can't remember what they are, and I apologize.
I think it's the next one, Cindy.
What?
Application process is more organized when this is in the home occupation criteria. The application process goes through the ZEO unless the ZEO determines the PZC needs to have input in the approval. Having the required criteria for a home occupancy permit is in one place eliminates the applicant having to look through regulations for other required criteria for approval. There is no criteria for notarized signature of dwelling owner. The applicant is a tenant. Tira says that was definitely an error of omission. If there is no objection, we'll propose adding that into the regulations.
Okay, that was it. That was it. Because I actually put that on the application, guys. So
Yeah, no, thank you for that one.
Yeah.
Item 9, zoning districts, Article 4D, Business Development District, and Article 4E, Thompson Development District, do not have retail
Okay.
listed on the chart of permitted uses. This is maybe an oversight, but it is difficult to work with potential retail businesses in the business development district when retail is not an option. If there is no objection, we will propose the addition of retail to that table of uses. And I hear none. Item 10, previous zone district for the area going to Webster off of Route 193 North, a portion of Sandam Road up Indian Inn Road, encompassing Bonnet Street, Leon, Elaine, Lillian Ave, Colonial Road, South Shore Road, were zoned R20 and are zoned RRAD. Most of the lots in this area are postage stamp lots. This change creates many non-conforming lots and development on the lots is more restrictive following the non-conforming regulation and RRAD guidelines for development. Tira says, while it is true that one of the goals was to reduce nonconformities, it will not be possible to eliminate them all. The parameters for the CRD, which is most of the former R20, were set to allow for increased density in areas served by water and sewer. The lots referred to above do not have public utility access, so it would be inappropriate to base their dimensional requirements on the CRD. These lots would therefore be existing non-conforming within the RRAD, subject to guidelines and limitations. New lots cannot be created at that size within the RRAD, with the exception of an approved conservation subdivision that has been signed off as feasible for water septic by NDDH. Cindy says homeowners have lived in this area with R20 criteria. Given the premise that R20 was based on public and water and sewer, perhaps some research needs to be done to determine why this area was zoned as R20 years ago.
Okay, can I add to that just real quickly? So since I wrote that, there's also a section off of Sandam Road going toward East Thompson Road that was R20. There's a section around Porta Plain Road. Yeah, Porta Plain Road, that's R20. And I found out today, there's a section off of Church Street, Oak Hill Drive, which I took a ride around before I came into work, or came home tonight. That's an R20. All these lots are small lots, and so now they're all RRA districts. Now the particular issue that I came up with today is there's 2 lots that are a 1/4 acre in this Oak Hill Drive off of Church Street, and he wants to combine the 2 lots into one and to sell it. And he still, so by combining the 2 lots to sell it, they are no longer a lot of record, so then they have to conform to the new regulations, which combining the 2 lot only makes a 1/2 acre, and he wouldn't have enough room to build a house on. So he cannot sell his land under this regulation, under our new regulation. He can't combine them and make money off of it. So these are some of the issues that you're coming up with because you changed the districts. I respect what Tara said concerning the public water and sewer for R20, but I also feel those lots way out that I quoted, South Shore Road and all that area, I believe that was done because they are by the lake, by water and everything, and it was just convenient to name it R20. So I don't know what you want to do with this, but problems are going to creep up, such as what crept up today, what I was asked for today on that.
So Cindy, you think those lots are close enough to the lakes that it might be appropriate to rezone them for the Lake District?
Sure.
Yeah, because
No,
Well,
there's
you
not
say
this
sure.
Oak
The
Hill-
question is, are they or are they not?
So some of those lots had access to Webster Lake that was deeded
Right.
access down there as well. So they are technically have access to Webster Lake.
Yeah.
And there is the town of Webster Water and Sewer down there too,
Right.
depending
right.
on where they are.
Yeah, because
Do
one
they
person.
have access to it?
Yes, because one person is going to build on his lot, and he is going to get his water and sewage from Webster. 'Cause
Okay.
he's right on the border there.
Because if that is the case, if they have access to water and sewer, that changes the conversation considerably.
Yeah.
Determine which properties.
I don't know about the properties by LaPorte Road. I don't know why those were named R20. And the ones off of Oak Hill Road on Church Street. I have no idea where that was done like that, but some of them are in Putnam and some of them, because it's right on the border of Putnam. So that's a pretty interesting place up there when I went to take a look at it.
Yeah, and I know some of those deeds definitely have access as a right of way to the Webster Lake down by the old dugout. That Mr. Bonnet created that subdivision, in those deeds, he put access to Webster Lake.
So I think you can't ignore the difference between having or not having public water and sewer. And we did make accommodations for the Lake District properties based on the history of essentially second home lots that were carved up and created sort of a retrofit dilemma. I think that you can make the argument for rezoning to CRD any of those properties that genuinely have a possibility for public utility access, because that is the whole purpose of having those smaller lot sizes, is that they're not subject to the limitations of the soils. Similarly, I think anything that should perhaps have been included in the Lake District but did not get picked up when Marla and Carolyn looked at it and decided where to draw the line. We did not question that. We looked at the map, liked the map, and accepted it. You have the option of expanding it, and I would suggest that, if we do so, obviously we're not going to levy a rezone fee on anybody we do that to. Any of the properties that were zoned R20 that don't fit one of those two categories, I would not rezone. I'm guessing from having looked at every single parcel on the map when I was double checking how the assessor was going to update them. It seems to me that there are certain numbers of those properties that were designated R20 to retrofit it, right? Just to sort of make them not non-conforming. But if the soils can't support it, that's not a responsible choice.
Well, the ones on Oak Hill Drive, this particular, we pulled a property card for a house that was already built there. And the water was from the town of Putnam and the sewer is private. So I have to think that perhaps, I could take a look at all of them up there that are built, all the houses, the lots that have numbers, house numbers. But I suspect that it's probably all water from Putnam, but not septic.
But it's really the septic that's the issue, not the water so much.
Yeah, you're right. It is. It is.
Yeah, so I would be interested in seeing, some suggestions for, properties that should belong to the Lake District and didn't get picked up, properties that do have access to sewer that can be adjusted. I think that would make sense, but I do also agree with not putting in properties that don't have that water and sewer access.
Okay.
Anything further on that, or is that just a try to do some background to figure out which properties are which?
Yeah, I think that needs some background work.
Okay.
Item 11, I think maybe perhaps is a moot point now. The sections of Oakwood, Shady Lane were zoned R20. Sections of Porter Plain, Babula, Liberty Lane, and Emile Drive were zoned R20. Because there are no street names on the current zoning map, it is difficult to determine if the streets referenced above were put into the Little Pond Lake District. Has that been clarified?
I think I can clarify. Well, now that we have a list of the streets that have the old zone and the new, now they have the new zone. Like, I can look into that a little bit more. Yeah, I wonder why those places were R20. That's weird.
Item 12, Article 4B, Common Residential District, Section 3E, and Article 4D, Lake District, Section 3E, Existing Non-Conforming Lots. Existing non-conforming lots is defined in Article 2, Section 10, Section B. Front and rear setbacks, no less than 1/6 of the lot's road frontage along a public way or 35 feet, whichever is less. Side setbacks shall be no less than 1/2 of the front setback. Setbacks for an accessory structure shall equal or exceed that of the primary structure. The ZEO shall permit the construction of a required special needs access way to protrude into any setback, provided that it is the only reasonable location for such access way. What is this in the sections for? Don't we just go by non-conforming regulations? Justification, it's confusing. Tira comments, these special conditions for existing non-conforming lots were included as an accommodation for owners of these small parcels in the Lake District and were discussed at some length. The consensus was that the history of the creation of so many of these lots for summer residences warranted special treatment. Cindy says, perhaps years ago, the Lake District was a popular choice for summer residents, but the reality is more and more dwellings and lots are being remodeled and developed to year-round living. My point is, why add another element into development on a non-conforming structure or lot?
Yeah, that whole thing is confusing. I'm sorry. I guess we're just gonna have to take, after reading this and then after working, this was done in January and working with some people who are trying to develop some lots out there. I guess we're just gonna have to take it lot by lot and go with the new regulations and just, not mess with anything. So, we can just bypass that.
Okay, great. Item 13, definition of fence. Fence, a freestanding structure intended for division no more than 7 feet tall while maintaining maintenance space to the owner's property line on either side. A fence or structure over 7 feet in height shall meet building setbacks. Add to the definition, fence setback from a town road shall be determined by the Director of Public Works. Placement of fence shall not obstruct roadside division. Tira agrees that the item should be added, but should it be in the definitions? Or should it be in Article 4, Section 4, general provisions for all districts? And so that, my dear commissioners, is the question before us. Where do we think it makes more sense?
That's interesting. Tara, what is your strong feeling on that?
Well, my feeling is that it's provisions for adding a fence, not a definition of what a fence is,
Okay.
and therefore it should be in the general provisions.
Okay, all right, I agree with that.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that it be in there, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, okay. So we'll go ahead and suggest putting that in Article 4, Section 4. Go play the number 4 in your lotto tickets because it'll apparently be subsection 4. Item 14, are we going to place a fee on a zoning permit?
Joe, Chairman,
Mr.
Joe,
Wright.
can you go back to that for a minute? So are you putting that decision in the Department of Public Works? In other words, he's gonna be deciding?
Oh, we've already talked about that.
Yeah, but what guidelines is he gonna have? Or is he
It's-
gonna make up his mind on each one?
The reason why it came up is because each street has a different measurement. So he would just go, I would call up and say, what street, such and such street wants a fence. How many feet does he have to stay away from the road? And then he would look on his chart and they would tell me.
He has a chart that determines that? You're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, well, yeah. He has a format for each street is different. So I guess it's a charter or something that he has, because I've asked him before and he's given me the answers. And people have asked me, how far should they set it back from the road too? And so then I have to call him up and ask him. I have to call Rich up.
I would assume that if it's like a corner lot, it has to be the distance, like I don't know if it's still in your new regs, the 150-foot distance sight line visits. I don't know if that's in his chart or what.
Well, the sight line.
But if you're putting your fence on a corner lot, right to the end of your lot that borders the road,
Right.
that's not acceptable.
Right, so So the placement of fence should not obstruct roadside vision, and that would be for a corner lot.
Yeah, but is that it? Where do I read that?
Well, well, we don't have for a corner lot. It just says placement of fence shall not obstruct road site vision.
Oh,
So when people call me up and ask me if they can put a fence up, I look at their plot, I go to map geo, and if they're on a corner lot, I tell them that they have to slant that fence down so they don't obstruct the corner vision. Each street in town has a different distance, whether it's corner lot or, just in the middle of the road there, from the road as to how far the fence should be put back. And that's why it's recommended to talk to the town highway department, to the town highway director.
or a driveway, you're coming out of your driveway, you can't have your fence right to the
Right.
town road, right? So
Right,
he's got to
exactly.
have some
Yeah,
type
there's,
of regulation or something, a footage or something. Okay, I'll talk to Rich and see what kind of chart he's got that you're
Okay.
returning.
okay, all right, okay.
Thank you, John. Item 14, are we going to place a fee on a zoning permit for a new or replacement sign? The logic to me, this is Tira, seems that if we are requiring a permit, there should be a permit fee collected, especially in light of the feelings some have that signs represent visual clutter. Establishing a fee may reduce the number of sign permits an individual owner seeks. My thought is, and Cindy says a separate sign fee, question mark? And so my thoughts would be that whatever we determine this fee to be, right, we'd want to add it to Appendix F, right, to the schedule of fees.
Yes, to the table of fees, or however we
So
describe
any
it. Yeah.
fee, I believe you still have to add the $60 for the state because it's a fee. So you're gonna be, how much you're gonna be asking for a sign per, fee for a sign permit. I
That's
can
up to the
check,
commission.
yeah, and I can check with Donna to make sure that we have to collect $60 on the sign, for a sign fee as well as what we want for it. Do you want me to check with Donna?
I think that's the way it goes, Cindy, is that you
Yeah,
gotta pay that
yeah.
fee anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
So, I'm just trying to find. Right, so a zoning permit application is 100, right?
mm,
I would think maybe we don't want to go. I mean, it doesn't require as much work from you, Cindy, as a zoning permit does.
no, well, I mean, it requires the same amount of work. You just look at it and it has the right size, you look at the regulation, yep, follows the regulation, you sign off on it, and you collect your fee. We have to make a permit form,
Uh-huh.
so have to do another form. I wouldn't go more than 100, no.
Somewhere between 60 and 100 seems to be our logical range.
What's the sign, what is the sign for? Like when you're gonna have a,
Oh, just a sign for your business,
Any sign, Charlene.
yeah.
so I would have to go down
Chairman.
there and pay $100 for my sign. And then if I want to replace it, I gotta pay another $100?
That is my question too. I was just gonna re-ask that question.
Well, that seems stupid, but
How about,
seems
the
to be the way
sign?
it's going.
If it's a sign, how about the special of the day sign? You put that out, is that you have to get a permit for that? Put it out in front of your business? It's a
Well, is
sign,
it allowed, is it
it's a sign,
permitted?
right? I'm
Is
sorry?
it,
It's a sign.
right, but is. I hate
I don't think that you
signs.
treat sandwich boards like that,
Yeah.
the way you treat other permanently affixed signs.
Well, we didn't allow sandwich boards before. Is that eliminated now?
No, we pretty much allow anything now.
We're allowing stuff so that businesses can do well in Thompson.
And then
So
you're gonna
I'm not,
do-
I'm being sarcastic because you guys, all the flags that you said that people can have, so I'm being sarcastic. Sorry.
Okay, right, so yeah, so the point here is, right, that permits for signs shall be valid as issued for a period of 5 years, right? That's in our regulations. We don't do that for other permits, right?
That's what I'm
I don't,
aware.
I believe that is one of the only ones where you, if not the only one, where you have a stated time limit.
So it does seem a little, let's say, sus, as my students would say, that we require them to come in for a new permit every 5 years and charge them for said permit every 5 years.
I actually don't think that's what that is, or at least not as the question is originally phrased. A new or a replacement sign, but if it's just a renewal on the sign, all you're really doing is saying it's the same as it was before, carry on.
So why do we need that?
What do we need,
A
what,
new
John?
sign,
Why does somebody have to come in and say my sign is the same thing? Even come in to see us? What's the
because the
rationale
commission
there?
decided that they wanted to be sure that signs were not allowed to get in cruddy condition over time.
Yeah.
That was the decision of the commission. It was an aesthetic concern.
I like the aesthetic part of it, but I'm not so sure I want to pay every time I want to, if my sign's looking a little crappy, I would refix it and I wouldn't want to have somebody come in. I wouldn't want to go in and pay to refix my sign. So then I
maybe-
would to
So maybe
save-
only for new signs and not for replacement signs or renewed.
That's
Well,
what I
I-
would think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I think, well, yes, but then I wouldn't want my sign to be looking like the sign across from the bank. And that's just like, that's okay, but it's really not okay. So I'm not sure a fee would have to go along with it as much as somebody checking the sign. Or maybe they could I would send a picture in at 5 years and just say, this is what my sign's looking like. Okay, that's great. Or that you could say, well, really, you can't even see the words on it. It's falling apart. Could you spruce that up a little bit? I mean, is that asking too much or?
Yeah, so there is some language in the regulations that offers the CEO, some of that enforcement.
I think I just basically want to know if somebody comes in for a new sign, do I charge them a fee for the permit for a new sign?
If it's their first time starting a business and it's going in, I say, why would we do that to somebody that's first starting a business? But then if we have in the past, then yes, but not.
I've never
keep charge-
taken money. I've never taken money for a sign
Perfect.
since I've been there for 3 years.
So
I
I
never
guess
knew
the
that.
question is, if you're issuing a signed permit, Cindy,
Right.
are you sending a payment to the state?
I'm not taking any fee. No.
Okay.
No. And Donna read this, so she would have made a comment on this, I think, if that's what she had done before, if John Mahan did before I got. Alvin, what did you do about signs when you were temporary CEO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember.
Oh, you don't remember? Okay. Yeah. No, that's legitimate, believe me. Unless you have those papers in front of you in the zoning office, you don't remember anything.
Okay, so I've heard a couple people say that they don't feel that there should be a fee for signs. Is there any feeling that there should be a fee for signs from the commission?
What if it's enlarged or moved?
Why then, Alvin?
Would that become a new sign, Alvin?
In my book, it would be a new sign.
So are we charging a fee for a new sign?
My vote is no.
Okay, I think John and Charlene have both expressed no on that.
I'm a no as well.
Yeah. Great.
Wasn't the purpose of all these changes that we're making and stuff to encourage business in town? And here we go, every time they want to do something, we're charging them a fee.
Yeah,
Great,
that's
yeah,
why
I think,
voted
okay.
no.
So is there anyone who
Yeah, I
feels
think-
strongly that we should have a fee for a sign? Hearing none, I would say no fee.
All right, I just put
It's
this
the
in because I
consensus of the commission.
just put that in because I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to charge a fee or not.
Absolutely. And so we've now
Okay.
answered your question, Cindy.
Good, great, thank you.
There is no reference in the new regulations on one-time events such as carnivals or fairs. Previously, a zoning permit was required with criteria to follow. The issue has not come up to date, but is this something the zoning office should regulate? Tira says, as I recall, this was discussed during the rewrite process. At that time, it was determined that the fire marshal permit was the only one that served the best interest of the town for such temporary use. The issue has come up. A private owner had a pop-up event on her property over the holidays and was advised to have the fire marshal do an inspection for traffic safety. This seems sufficient. Cindy says that issue did not need any approval because it was a small tent. Fire marshal regulations determine when he has to go out to sign a permit for one-time events. It is really a non-issue at this time. I am not sure why the previous regulations required the zoning office to be part of the permitting process for a temporary event. It sounds like staff is in agreement that this is not something zoning needs
Non-issue,
to
yeah.
get involved with.
Right.
Is that the sense of the commission as well?
Yeah, because if I may, Joe, I think there's ordinances on that kind of stuff.
Great. So we wash our hands of it. Thank you, Mr.
Right.
Dunn. Item
Thank
16,
you.
solar structures. Is it necessary to identify a solar system that is placed on wheels for movement around the property? Issue will be coming before the Planning and Zoning Commission, just asking. Cindy and I discussed this in relation to a specific inquiry we had from a prospective buyer of a homestead property. It is my opinion that if it is a portable unit, it should be treated like any other generator that a homeowner might have, and regulating through zoning is probably unnecessary. Once a structure becomes permanently fixed, it should be subject to the provisions for solar.
Yeah,
Agree, okay.
Okay, and the commission tends to agree with that as well. Item 17, trailers and mobile homes. No more than 2 such trailers shall be parked on a single lot in the RRAD or the Lake District. A dwelling located on a lot that is non-conforming in size or other dimensional requirements may be extended, altered, or rebuilt, provided such an expansion does not require a waiver of state health codes for a subsequent septic repair caused by insufficient separation distances to residential water supply wells and water courses. The existing dimensional nonconformities are not further reduced, and the height of the building does not further exceed any maximums. And B, in any district, oh, I'm sorry, no, I went on to a different page. Sorry, friends.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, Joe, you totally lost me there.
Yeah,
I jumped back a page. Okay, so that was, I'm sorry, trailers and mobile homes. Cindy says, I interpret this to mean a property owner can park 2 trailers, mobile or motor homes on the lot. Any more than 2 is a violation, even if it is registered and paying town taxes. Tira concurs with that interpretation. The commission had some concerns about cluttering up lots with trailers, as she recalls. Is the commission in agreement with the interpretation of both the zoning enforcement officer and the planner?
Yes, I am.
As am I.
All right, wish me good luck. I think Dave knows what I'm talking about, right, David?
Don't keep it to yourself, Dave.
And I see the lights on that trail. I went by there Sunday night.
Sunday night, you did?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
E3 says, any such trailer or vehicle may be occupied only during the annual period from April 1st through December 31st, except as described below in Article 5A, Section 2B, 5 through 7. Did the commission intend to extend the living in the trailer to the rural residential ag district? If so, there is wide open door for the abuse of living in the trailer year round.
did everybody know that that's what you did? That you extended it to the rural residential district? Were you aware of that? I had thought it was only for the Lake District until I had to address it. Actually went on a violation and the guy pointed out to me, he said, no, your new regulations say this. And I was apologetic and said, you're absolutely right. And I'm going to change them. No, just kidding. But it was like, I couldn't believe that you guys did it for that the commission approved it for RRAD. It does open, hopefully this gentleman is only going to use that trailer from April to December. I got a complaint that the trailers were there to begin with, and that's why I went out there. But I just think that opens a big door for a year-round living.
Where is that RRD of that section?
Yes, it's
RRAD is most of the town.
yeah, 75% of the town, Charlene. I mean, I disagree that the trailers should be there from April to December. I still think it should be April to October, but that's what you decided upon. But to have it in the rural residential, phew, yeah.
Yeah, so Tira had commented in the document that the seasonal limitation prohibits year-round occupancy. There were strong feelings during the commission discussion that limiting the length of individual stays was too much interference with the property owner's rights. The item as written was the consensus of the majority. Cindy does not have the same recollection as Tira on extending it to RAD, and she thinks it will be abused and create a lot of problems.
I guess,
Yeah, go
what,
ahead.
maybe they'll freeze to death.
No, not necessarily. They plug into the house electricity.
Well, I remember talking about this, and we were talking about it at the lake. I remember that. And then I think we talked, then did we move over to Little Pond? Like, because there was some trailers there.
That's a
Correct?
Lake District now too.
That's, all right. And so then there's trailers, like mobile home trailers, not mobile home, like camping trailers parked other places that people are saying.
Well, oh yeah, we're working on one now, but David and I, there's a lot of them around town if I could just get to them, but there's a few that people are living in them around town.
And so if we say they have to be out by just, if we don't want them in the residential areas, then who goes and tells them to get out? And then
Well-
can we follow that up? Like, can we follow it up and make sure that that's happening, or?
Well, here's what I'll tell you is you can handle it in the Lake District. The office can handle it in the Lake District. Your rural residential is, like Tara said, it's 75% of your district. And if you let people stay in those trailers in those areas from April to December, I just think you're opening up for abuse for year-round living. And no, I don't think you have right now the capacity to regulate that and to follow up every single complaint. No.
So let me ask a question, and I'm totally neutral on this, right? Totally neutral. What is the actual burden of harm to the community if people are living in their RVs?
Septic, wastewater disposal and septic disposal, the abuse of that, and the appearance that it gives to the community, because some of them are not that well maintained. It's and they're in front, and people are living in them.
Plus, you're adding another residence on a piece of property.
Yeah, exactly. That's not what
Right.
people bought their houses for, is to see somebody out next door living in a trailer.
All
Yeah.
right, so leaving the opinions of people aside, and I'm neutral on this issue. is there any place or set of places in the RRAD
Sarah, can I
that
interrupt?
is,
Sarah.
can I stop you from interrupting until I'm done saying what I am
No,
going to ask?
because you're staff to the thing now. Whatever you're saying is that, you're trying to say what you want to say to the commission. I don't think you have a say in a sense. I think the commission members ought to be discussing this amongst that stuff, along with our CEO.
Well, John,
So,
John,
John, what I am actually doing, since you did actually interrupt me, as
Okay,
staff, who is advisory to the PZC, is I am trying to help the PZC think through these issues. I don't give a damn whether there are trailers or not trailers in any of these districts. I don't like them any more than any other person. I'm trying to ask the question in a neutral way. If you don't find that helpful, I'm sorry. If the rest of the commission would like to hear the question, they may respond to it. Mr. Chairman, may I continue?
yes.
Thank you. So the other question that I was going to ask is there any other area in what we now call the RRAD that is typically used for recreational stays that we were trying to accommodate when we wrote this?
Want to repeat that question?
Yeah,
Tamara?
I think her question is, right, we said it made sense in the Lake District because of, what the use of the Lake District usually. Were there other areas within the RRAD with similar uses or uses that would make sense to have trailers that we were trying to accommodate
No,
when we moved it to the RRAD?
my automatic answer would be no.
What other areas are you saying? where the
I think she's literally asking that question.
Asking.
Are there
I
places?
am literally asking.
Yeah, it's not a leading
Are there
question.
areas in town?
Yeah.
I don't believe there are. I agree with Cindy.
Yeah,
So
I
if
think,
there are
I
no-
think it would, oops, sorry, go ahead.
So go ahead.
No, that's okay, Charlene. I was going to say, if there are no other areas that fit the parameters under which you would have campgrounds or recreational properties like that, then maybe it does indeed make sense to remove that possibility from the RRAD. I mean, you guys discussed this section a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah, but that was
But
mostly-
that's interesting because I don't remember even talking about
Yeah,
allowing
no,
it.
we talked a lot about it. We talked about, right, I think the old regulations had, something about like a certain number of nights,
You
consecutive
could
nights
stay, yep.
that you could stay. And we talked a lot about that.
I think we were talking about, like, when I answered the question, I felt like we were talking about campgrounds or camping,
Yeah, right.
aquatic, that's what I was thinking of. And there are some campers that are probably in places that they shouldn't be, but honestly, you can't even control that because we don't have a zoning officer that can even get out of our office, never mind. So I feel like these regulations that we make, they're great, but if no one can follow them up, I mean, we'll be changing these again in September and nothing will have changed. So I don't know I don't know why we spend so much time on something that we can't really enforce unless someone causes a scene and then it becomes a priority. But
So
it
then,
doesn't.
would that justify you taking it out of the residential, the RRAD district?
Well, we could take it out, but then you gotta go get them out of that district.
Well, I'm not too sure how many people know that they can do that in the RRAD for 9 months out of the year.
Yeah.
So sooner we take it
That
out.
was what I was thinking. I was thinking aquatic, camping, and I don't want you telling me that I have to be out of my camper by October. I'll be in it till December 31st. If where it's parked, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to do where I can, obviously. But so I was more concerned about the time, like only April till October didn't seem like a lot when people camp September, October, November. We go camping. So that's me.
Okay, and if you remember, if you were there when the Northeast District Department of Health was there, I specifically asked what were the health regulations. She said that there are no regulations, and so then my next statement was, so then we're depending on the integrity of the camp owner to discharge his waste correctly, and she said yes. So if we got complaints about that, then we could call the Northeast District Department of Health if they're not discharging it appropriately.
I remember that.
What?
I remember that
Yeah.
conversations we had on that. That was one of the big issues we had that we lengthily discussed about the camper being there. If they put in a like not a, they have these units now you can hook up to your trailer. They're little tanks. It's like having a compost system put in where you're not really discharging into the ground or whatever. That is something I think we really discussed. It's a fine line.
So is there any commissioners who feel strongly that it should be kept in the RRAD? Is the consensus of the commission then to remove it from the RRAD and leave it just in the Lake Districts?
My feeling to that would be is let's leave it in the Lake District, because that was our main concern to begin with out of the whole thing, to the RRAD. Well, you could tie into your own septic system on your property. People have done that where they just tie into their own septic system. It's a practice that has been done. So I personally would just say, let's leave it with any lake district.
Is there any objection to the proposal to remove it from the RRAD and maintain it in the Lake District? Lake Districts. Okay, hearing none, that will be the proposal. Her next comment is, such trailers or vehicles may be stored without being occupied in any district. And it says, are we still referring to 2 trailers? Tira says, a good question. I suggest the answer is yes, based on the reasons they were limited to 2 occupied trailers in the first place, but the commission may wish to clarify that. Cindy, is the concern that people are storing more than 2 trailers?
Oh yeah, we have one that has 4 trailers on it. Oh, was the 4 or 3, Dave? I forget.
It was 2 travel trailers and a 2 storage.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's 2 storage. No, there was 3 trailers on it actually, and then the 2 storage
That's right.
containers. Yeah.
Yeah, there was mobile home and
Yeah.
then the 2
Yeah.
travel trailers.
Yeah. I don't, I have to be, I can't recall why I put that in. I'd have to review it. I apologize. I'm sorry. But it's 9 o'clock. I'm not too sure you guys want to continue. You want to keep on going, or you want to just stop here and just set up another time?
It's up to you guys. I'm good to go as long as you are.
It does seem that, it's up to.
Yeah, we got at least, we're only halfway through.
Several of these are quick, seem to
Okay,
be quick fixes.
okay.
Several of them may require more discussion. What is the will of the commission?
Well, I personally would like, can we go through the quick ones and just get as much as we can out of the way? If it's just, yes, sorry, I wanted to say that. Yeah, oh, I'm good, then get rid of those. And if it needs more detail, then pick another night. But I kind of wanted to wrap this up the day we
Okay.
wrapped it up.
Yeah, well,
So let's go through the quick ones. I'll go through the quick ones. The next one is item 18. The table of contents does not have a line item for site plan review. And the comment from Tira is that it can be added pretty quickly to the table of contents. Any objection to that?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, I hear none. Number 19 is Cindy is proposing adding the words zoning district in the section on application requirements to describe, zoning district table of uses for consistency in identifying the zoning district table of uses. Is there any objection to that change?
No, if it's gonna make it read smoothly, then that's fine.
Excellent. Number 20 was an error in the creation of the table of context and will be fixed. 21 may require a little bit of conversation. So maybe we can circle back to that one. Okay, the next one is
Interior lots, which is gonna require a
Yeah,
lot
the
of
next
Yeah,
one
conversation.
that's a big one. That's
is
a
a
big one.
heavy one.
Okay,
ADUs.
I think that requires more
Yeah,
discussion, probably, Joe.
the horses we've discussed.
oh, so which one are you going with, Joe? Where are you at now?
I'm on page 9
We're
of
on-
the original. I'm in
Oh.
Donna's comments.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, we've discussed that.
Uh, Donna's number 3 is accessory buildings.
Okay,
Yeah, we just had one of those come up, didn't we?
yeah,
Yeah.
we're.
That
so I
was
don't
in
know.
the,
The accessory
But
building.
yeah, this is more like the 2 exemplars that came up earlier in the year.
Yeah. I think we
So
handled-
you guys might want to actually talk about that.
Mhm.
So you want to hold that off for discussion?
I think so.
Okay,
Number 4 we discussed, and we need to circle back on with more information. Item 5 is no streets on
Street-
street names. What's sorry? No. No street names on the zoning map. I'm not sure.
yeah, that's really tough. It was tough until, what's his name? Paul came up with a list of, streets in their old zones and new zones, so
So that has been addressed.
it is working for us, but it's still a lousy map.
Yeah, well, let's.
So-
I
Yeah,
don't know if
just
that's.
for whatever it's worth, guys. I am not a mapper, and I already know that I'm gonna have to take a GIS mapping course. But right now there fundamentally is no mapper at Town Hall to whom we have access. So even if you guys decide, yes, we'd love to have the street names, there's no solution for that in the short term, and I don't know how quickly that can be resolved.
The old zoning map didn't have all the street names. It had the major ones that you could literally see when you were reading them, I think. I'd have to look at it again, but it was just too difficult. Until Paul did that book, it was like a nightmare, so.
Here, I have a guy who works with GIS and mapping. I might be able to help you with that one.
Oh, really?
Just offline, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we can talk about that then. Because
Okay.
this is going to be a bear until I can actually get a GIS course in.
Yeah, he's familiar with AutoCAD, GIS, all that stuff. So it might be something easy he can whip through.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Dave.
And then aside from the next one, which has to do with the property cards and GEO, which my understanding is has been or will be
Yeah, there, he's,
updated. It seems like the remaining topics are some heavy
pretty
ones.
heavy.
Yeah.
with substantial conversations to be had.
I would agree.
But I do think we did get a fair bit accomplished tonight.
The only other part, all right, well, is the farm stands, which is, I have some serious comments on that, issues on just a farm stand for hobby and a farm stand. But if you don't want to go through that tonight, but the only other one is the second part, that what I sent over to you today on the districts that allow agriculture. And I went upstairs to Donna and talked to Donna to just see that I wasn't crazy in my head, and that I was asking for the right thing. You have criteria to do agriculture under RRAD, but you're allowing agriculture in all the other on the districts I listed up here in this section, but you have no criteria under that. And then why do you need a zoning permit for agriculture? And I know it kind of relates to what we talked about earlier. So that whole part is very, very confusing. You have the criteria under RRAD, but you have no criteria under CRD, TCBD, BDD, et cetera, et cetera. So if someone comes to me and says, I have agriculture in this district, what do? I just go, I don't know.
So Cindy, would it resolve the issue if we either move the standards for agriculture to general provisions, or make notes in the other districts that the parameters for agriculture are discussed under the RRAD?
I think that, yes.
Okay.
What do you guys think? That or special provisions?
General provisions.
General
General
provisions in all
provisions.
districts.
I
Yeah.
think it should be in each individual one, like you outlined, just like that, just to be clear about it.
Yeah.
What did you say again, Brian? I'm sorry.
I don't, you can add it to general provisions, but I think it should be outlined in each individual one as well.
That you refer to,
The RRAD, yeah.
okay, great. Okay, that solves that. Until I
Thank
find
you.
more that it's like that.
Thank you for bringing that last one to our attention, because that, I think you're right, was a pretty quick fix too.
Okay.
Um,
And of course, the format, that was just two of those. That is my organized brain when I saw that those two didn't have a abbreviation.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, you're right, that's super easy as well.
And it's not earth crushing.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your work on this. At our April meeting, I think we'll schedule another meeting for this.
Okay.
That makes sense to everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is very productive.
In that case, I will move on to item 3 and will entertain a motion.
You got it.
Second.
Mr. Lenke moves to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Santos. This meeting is adjourned at 9:13 p.m. Thank you all. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.